Trump's economic war, with heavy tariffs on many countries, has strengthened China's position as an alternative to the U.S. While China responds to sanctions, it still faces challenges. Let's explore further with Eagle Discovery. China's economic stimulus and trade war. In an effort to shield its economy from the mounting pressures of a trade war with the United States, the Chinese government, alongside the Communist Party, unveiled an ambitious economic stimulus plan this past Sunday. This initiative is designed to encourage public spending and boost domestic consumption, which has been underperforming due to external trade pressures. The detailed plan includes a range of social and economic reforms such as increasing pensions, enhancing the quality of sanitation services, and raising wages for workers. These measures are intended to stimulate internal demand and support struggling Chinese households. However, despite these attempts to invigorate domestic spending, much of the responsibility for implementation has been delegated to local governments. Unfortunately, these local entities are already burdened by enormous debts and are grappling with a significant downturn in revenues derived from state land sales. This has created a serious challenge in executing the plans effectively, especially as many regions face financial instability. At the core of these efforts is China's ongoing attempt to reduce its reliance on an ever-growing trade surplus, which amounted to nearly $1 trillion last year. With the imposition of a 20% tariff on Chinese exports to the U.S. by President Trump, and similar tariff increases by countries across Europe, Latin America, Africa, and the Middle East, China is now faced with the critical task of rebalancing its economic model away from overdependence on exports. China's response to economic challenges. Amid the deepening trade war, the Chinese government has been keen to reassure the domestic population about the security of their investments. The government's published document not only lays out the economic stimulus plan, but also emphasizes measures aimed at stabilizing the country's financial markets. Key provisions of the plan include bolstering the stock market and providing support for the beleaguered real estate sector, which has been severely affected by falling property prices. The crash of the real estate market has wiped out substantial savings among China's middle class, triggering a shift in consumer behavior. Many households have curtailed discretionary spending, particularly in the service sectors like hospitality and dining, and have instead chosen to place their savings in low-interest-bearing bank accounts. Despite the bleak outlook in several sectors, one area of optimism has been the Chinese stock market. While U.S. markets, such as the S&P 500, saw a major correction last week with a decline of more than 10% from its peak, Chinese markets have managed to stay positive. This has been partly driven by growing enthusiasm for the country's advancements in artificial intelligence, AI development. Moreover, the Hong Kong stock market, which is home to many Chinese companies, has seen a nearly 20% rise since President Trump assumed office, signaling a resilient investor sentiment despite broader global uncertainties. China's plans to boost consumption. In a rare move, China's highest government organs, the General Office of the Cabinet and the General Office of the Central Committee of the Communist Party, jointly issued a comprehensive plan aimed at stimulating domestic consumption. This marked a significant step by Chinese authorities to address the country's weak consumer spending, an issue that has been long-standing and exacerbated by the recent economic turbulence. The plan, which was announced with much fanfare, outlines various measures to increase disposable income for the Chinese population. These measures include enhancing pension payments for retirees, improving welfare programs for vulnerable populations, and increasing subsidies for local governments to support struggling businesses. Additionally, one of the most pressing goals of the stimulus plan is to ease the financial strain on local governments, many of which are struggling to meet their financial obligations. The plan calls for these governments to clear overdue debts owed to companies, which would help foster a more conducive environment for business growth. However, the plan's draft does not outline specific allocations from the central government to help local governments cover these expenses, leaving the implementation of these initiatives highly dependent on local fiscal health. On Monday morning, the National Bureau of Statistics of China held a press conference to release new economic data for January and February, which showed some promising signs. Senior officials are also scheduled to elaborate on further initiatives to support consumption, underscoring the central role of this sector in China's economic recovery. Economic tensions between Canada and China. Tensions between Canada and China have escalated in recent months, fueled by a series of tariffs and trade restrictions imposed by both sides. The Chinese government has levied a 100% tariff on Canadian electric vehicles and a 25% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum imports. In retaliation, the Canadian government has mirrored these actions, imposing similar tariffs on Chinese products. These escalating tariffs have significantly disrupted trade between the two countries, especially affecting key industries such as electric vehicle production and the metals sector. China's retaliatory measures are particularly damaging to Canadian manufacturers, especially in the automotive and resource industries. However, Beijing's response goes beyond just trade restrictions. It has signaled that it will also increase tariffs on agricultural products and food imports from Canada, a move that could have significant implications for Canadian farmers and the broader agricultural sector. This complex trade dispute is not only hurting businesses in both countries, but is also straining their diplomatic relations, making it one of the most volatile trade issues currently in play on the global stage. Tariff impact on Canadian and Chinese economies. The escalating tariffs between Canada and China are having profound effects on both economies. For China, the tariffs have increased the cost of doing business with Canada, particularly in the electric vehicle and steel sectors. The higher tariffs on these goods could push Chinese manufacturers to seek alternative markets, further diversifying their supply chains away from Canada. In the longer term, this shift could alter the trade dynamics not only between the two nations, but also on a global scale. For Canada, the economic repercussions are also severe. Increased tariffs on Chinese goods are likely to drive up the cost of imported goods, putting pressure on Canadian consumers and businesses that rely on affordable imports. Meanwhile, the retaliatory tariffs on Canadian agricultural products could hurt Canadian farmers, especially those heavily reliant on exports to China. As both countries grapple with these trade tensions, there are concerns that the situation could worsen, with each side taking further retaliatory actions. The broader implications of these tariffs on global trade balances are significant, as they could lead to a reevaluation of trade relationships between Canada, China, and other major economic players. In the context of this ongoing trade war, many are now questioning how this new wave of tariffs will reshape international trade structures moving forward. Before diving deeper into the specifics of these trade dynamics, remember to subscribe to our channel for real-time updates and analysis. Stay informed as the global economic landscape continues to evolve, with the Canada-China trade dispute being one of the key issues to watch. Canada's tariffs on Chinese electric cars. The decision to impose a 100% tariff on Chinese electric cars marks a dramatic shift in Canada's trade policy and has sent shockwaves through bilateral relations between Canada and China. While many Canadians may view this as a victory, particularly as it targets electric cars from manufacturers like Tesla's Shanghai factory and Chinese brands like Pide, the implications go far beyond a mere price hike on foreign cars. Canada has also broadened its tariff measures to include steel and aluminum products from China, indicating a tougher stance in international economic affairs, one that is unusual for a country known for its generally moderate position on trade. Prime Minister of Canada, in a statement on August 26, 2024, made it clear that the government would not tolerate what it perceives as unfair trade practices that jeopardize the sustainability of Canada's economy. He pointed out that the influx of Chinese-made electric vehicles posed a competitive threat to domestic production, particularly because of the aggressive pricing strategy that he labeled as dumping. This practice, in which products are sold at artificially low prices, undermines the profitability of local businesses and harms the overall industry. The government's response was swift and severe: a 100% tariff on electric vehicles imported from China. On the other hand, China has made its position clear. It has expressed strong objections, accusing Canada of violating international trade norms and warning that retaliation is inevitable. These tensions have raised concerns about the potential for an escalating trade war between the two nations, with far-reaching consequences for both economies. Global impact and future of EV market. The electric vehicle EV market has been rapidly evolving, with governments worldwide increasingly focused on reducing carbon emissions and phasing out fossil fuel-powered vehicles. As part of this global shift, the EV sector is one of the fastest-growing industries of our time. China, with its vast manufacturing capabilities and low-cost production infrastructure, has become a dominant player in this field. flooding global markets with a range of electric vehicles at highly competitive prices. In 2024, China made significant inroads into the European market, exporting hundreds of thousands of electric cars across the continent. This aggressive strategy has triggered concerns from governments, especially in North America, where domestic EV production is beginning to gain momentum. Canada, for example, is taking steps to bolster its own EV manufacturing sector. The Ontario province is seeing the establishment of a new electric vehicle manufacturing facilities with substantial government incentives for battery production and the extraction of raw materials necessary for EV batteries. The Canadian government's decision to impose a 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles is largely driven by the desire to protect and foster national industry. However, this move is also a reaction to what Ottawa perceives as China's unfair trade practices, particularly the practice of dumping EVs at prices that undercut Canadian manufacturers. These tariffs are a bold attempt to level the playing field and promote the growth of local production. However, the question remains, will this lead to a larger trade conflict, or will it push Canada to become more competitive in the growing global EV market? Will tariffs escalate the trade war? Given China's significant position in global trade, the imposition of these tariffs by Canada has not gone unanswered. On March 8, 2025, China retaliated by announcing a new set of tariffs targeting agricultural products imported from Canada. This move, described as a response to Canada's discriminatory tariff policies, is aimed at punishing Canada's agricultural exporters, who had previously relied on China as a major trade partner. Canada's agricultural sector, particularly in crops like canola, cereals, and livestock such as beef and seafood, is heavily dependent on exports to China. The imposition of tariffs on these goods could deal a devastating blow to Canadian farmers and producers, with potential ripple effects throughout the broader agricultural economy. This retaliatory tariff package is a clear message from China that it will not tolerate what it sees as unfair trade actions, and it underscores the high stakes involved in the ongoing trade dispute between the two countries. The question now is how far both nations are willing to go. As tensions rise, there is a growing concern that this trade conflict could escalate into a full-blown trade war, with both sides imposing further tariffs and restrictions. This could create instability not only for Canada and China, but also for the global economy, as the world's two largest trading partners become embroiled in a protracted economic standoff. The ongoing Canada-China battle. The trade dispute between Canada and China is no longer just a matter of tariffs and economic competition. It is rapidly becoming a geopolitical conflict. Canada's move to protect its domestic industries, particularly in the electric vehicle sector, has triggered a series of retaliatory measures from China. This has set the stage for a protracted battle, with both nations digging in their heels and signaling that they are prepared for a long-term conflict. In addition to the trade restrictions, Canada has introduced new measures aimed at shielding its businesses from external pressures. One of the key strategies has been the implementation of the customs extension process, which allows Canadian companies to delay the payment of duties on imported goods. This mechanism is designed to provide financial relief to businesses struggling with increased tariffs and to give them more time to adjust to the shifting trade environment. At the same time, China has indicated that it is prepared to escalate the conflict further, with the possibility of expanding tariffs to include sectors like wood, paper, and minerals. These industries are vital to Canada's economy, and any further sanctions could have severe consequences for Canadian exports. The tensions between Canada and China also reflect a broader global struggle for dominance in emerging sectors, such as green technology and renewable energy. China, with its extensive resources and manufacturing capabilities, is striving to become a global leader in these fields. Meanwhile, Canada is taking steps to protect its own national interests, particularly as it seeks to strengthen its domestic production of electric vehicles and related technologies. As both nations continue to raise tariffs and impose trade barriers, the global economic balance could be significantly disrupted. The rise of protectionist policies threatens to create a fragmented international trade environment, with countries increasingly turning inward to protect their own industries. The ongoing battle between Canada and China is a critical moment in the evolution of global trade, and its outcome could shape the future of international relations and economic policy for years to come. The ongoing tariff clash shows how both nations are making calculated moves. Will Canada manage to safeguard its market, or will China's counteractions reshape the economic landscape? Only time will reveal the outcome. What's certain is that the next decade will bring major transformations in global trade and the rapid rise of green technologies. Don't forget to subscribe and stay updated as we continue exploring the latest developments.